Ken Orange Theory Trader back with you with another video. This, without a doubt, is the most important video on this channel, period, point blank. The only risk management video you will need. So let's not waste time and get right into it. We have to remember that it's not trading that gets us trade, it's risk management. And I don't talk about it enough on this channel, but I wanted to make a video specifically for this, okay? Because the best traders aren't necessarily trading 24/7, they are the best at managing risk. So, what we're going to go over is 5 risk management tips. Some I've used, most I've used, and only one I have not, but I did want to expose you to it. And I want you guys to be empowered to either pick the one that makes the most sense to you or possibly combine elements of them to get your risk management plan underway and get it going. So here we go. So one tip, and this one I use, and this one I would heavily recommend that everyone uses. Okay, you don't have to, but I recommend it. Is moving your stop loss to break even. Now, people may ask, well, when should I do that? It depends. Everybody's different. You can move your stop loss to break even when you're up 1R, 2R, 3R, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the point is this, is that when you see profit on your trade, you set your stop loss to break even and it protects your downside. That's the best part about it. But the one drawback to it is that you will get unnecessarily stopped out when price may retrace. It's not all the time that price moves in a straight line to your take profit. Sometimes it may come back. And while you can always get back in, it may be a little annoying to have to deal with that versus just leaving the stop loss and take profit where it is and just letting the trade play out. But again, this is more for the person who wants to play defense instead of offense so much. And again, protecting your downside is the best part of this. So you take a trade and let's say you risk, I don't know, let's say $10. Okay, you risk $10 to try to make $30. So 1 to 3. All right. When price goes to $10 in profit, you move the stop loss to break even. That way, your worst case scenario is you make nothing and keep all your equity. But your best case scenario is you make $30 or the 1 to 3. All right. So that's how that goes. So if you don't do this, again, up to you. All right. So risk tip number 2 is taking partials or taking partial profits. So what is that? So let's say you start out risking a standard lot, okay, just on a position, no real take profit, but just to say you got a standard lot on a trade and you're up $50. All right. What you're going to do then is then cut your position size in half. All right. You're going to take partial profits. So that means you've profited $25 and now you move your stop loss to break even. So it's a combination of setting the stop loss to break even, but also taking partial profits along the way. Okay. Now, the best part of that is that you've actually made money versus just setting the stop loss to break even. If you set your stop loss to break even and the price goes against you, you made $0. If you take partial profits and price goes against you, you've still managed to make a profit for the day. So that's the pro. But the con is that you're capping your upside because if you would have left the standard lot on the trade and price goes all the way to your take profit, you won't make as much, okay, versus just you leaving the trade alone. So, do I take partials? Sometimes it just depends. But for the most part, you need to understand that if you take a partial profit, you're going to be making money and protecting your downside. All right, so that's another tip that you can use. Number 3 is something that's called asymmetric compounding. It may sound complicated, and I think there's other videos on this channel about this, but there's not. But there are other channels on YouTube, other videos on YouTube that explain what asymmetric compounding is. It's very simple. Let's say you start out with a $100 account and you risk $10 to make $20. So 1 to 2 risk to reward ratio, and you actually win. What you're then going to do is you're going to risk the same $10 that you just risked, which is you can say a 10% risk to 10% risk of your account. Okay, plus the $20 you just made. So that's $30 that you're risking, but you're going to stick with your same risk to reward ratio of 1 to 2. So for your next trade, you're going to risk $30 to make $60. Okay, 1 to 2. So just like you risked 10 to make 20, now you're going to risk 30 to make 60. But your worst case scenario is this: even if you lose the trade, okay, you're just back where you started, right? Because you've made, I'm sorry, you're not back to you lose you risk 30 to make 60. I apologize. And then if you lose, I'll have to fix that. You're back down to $90, right? You're only down $10 on your total. You're only down $10 on your starting equity. Okay, I apologize for the slip up. So I have to fix that. But you're not back to $100. I apologize, that's wrong. You're back. You're down to 90. So you started with 100. You go up to 120 and then you lose the next one, then you're down to 90. And then you may want to risk $9 to try to get, double that, which is 18, 1 to 2, etc. Or maybe cut it down to even 5. You risk 5 to get 10. Either way, you just kind of play it by ear. Now, the pros to that, though, is that you can grow your account quicker than just doing 1 to 2 all the time. You risk 10, you make 20. Okay, the next day you risk 10, you make 20. Okay, the next day you risk 10, you make 20. You're not using all of your equity to try to grow the account faster. But the con is that your profits can go just as fast when you lose. They'll come and go. Okay. So a good winning streak, if you're asymmetric compounding and you hit a winning streak, your returns can be astronomical. But if you hit a losing streak, it can really hurt. So you don't have to risk all the profits. You do have the flexibility to risk some of them. So for example, for this old example, let's say you make 20 bucks, right? You can then risk that same 10 and just another 10 out of this 20 to try to make 40. And I hope that makes sense. So you're not risking all the profit. You're only risking the same 10 that you would have risked anyway, and then $10 out of that 20. So you're risking 40 to make 20, the same 1 to 2 risk to reward, instead of all the profit that you made. Okay. But the way that I was taught this method was that whatever your profit is, you go ahead and risk it all on the next account to grow your account as fast as possible. Now, I would also say this before I move to the next tip. I would only use this temporarily. I wouldn't use this in perpetuity or forever and ever. I would use this just to get to a big enough account balance and then I would dump it. This is just to grow quickly, but I wouldn't say this is like a standard practice. Or possibly even on a prop account that you're already in profit in, you don't really care about it, something like that. So either you're just starting out or you're trying to get to a specific profit target. But to constantly use asymmetric compounding over and over and over again, I wouldn't recommend it because the swings are just too big. That's me, but you do what fits you. Okay, so the next one is dynamic risk. Now, this is a little bit of a fuzzy term, but to put it bluntly, if something's dynamic, it can change. And some people, they just make it up as they go. So sometimes they may risk 1% on the trade. Other times they may risk 10% on the trade. Other times they may risk 5% on the trade. It just depends. Now, with dynamic risk, so it just changes. Some traders, what they do is they develop an IT criteria for what they call an A plus setup. So they may have a couple of setups that they trade, but there's one main setup that they really, really like that they'll put a little more risk on there versus a secondary setup where they may do, be a little more conservative. So it just depends, right? It just depends. So the pros of this is that when you make a lot, you're going to risk big and you can make more on those A plus setups. And another pro is that on the trades that were so-so, because of your dynamic risk, you won't lose a lot. But you can also lose a lot when you're wrong. If you get an A plus setup that doesn't work out and you risk 10% on it, you're going to be down 10%. You're going to have to work that much harder to get your money back. And as well, it can produce erratic results where you're up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay, because the risk is dynamic, it's not really fixed. So while you're trading on intuition, etc., you can be up, say 20% on the day, and then the next day you can be down 50. It's just up and down. That's just how it's going to go if you're using dynamic risk to reward. All right. So the next one, this is the only one that I have not tried. The Martingale risk method. This is the riskiest of them all. All right. Here's how it works. Let's say you start with a small risk. Let's say you risk 10 bucks and you lose. All right. Doesn't matter the account balance. I'm just using that as an example. The next trade, what you're going to do is risk 20%, not 20%, but 20 bucks. All right. Every time you lose, you double what you risk in order to recoup your losses. So if you start out with 10 and you lose, your next trade, you risk 20 bucks. If you lose that one, you risk 40 bucks until you recover. Okay. The pros, you can recover your losses quickly if that works out. Okay. So just for the sake of this example, if you risk 10 bucks and lose, let's say we're doing 1 to 2 to keep it simple. So you're risking 10 to get 20. You lost. Now you're going to risk 20 to get 40 and you win, right? You're up for the day and you're done, right? But that's best case scenario. So it's simple to implement and it can give you potential for small gains. But here's the con. Number one, is going to require more starting capital because the thing is, if you're risking 10 and then 20 and then 40 and then 80, and then you better have a lot of money to be able to do something like that. And as well, if you get enough losses back to back to back to back, and you're still doubling your risk every single time, you're going to blow your account, right? A losing streak can wipe you out doing something like this. Okay, but that's the Martingale method. When it works, it can really work. But if it doesn't work, and you keep going, hey, it can really wipe you out. So what I would recommend if I were to try something like this, you probably only want to have a 2 to 3 trade limit per day, right? And even with that, and I hope you have like some money you could possibly deposit. Let's say if it's a small account. So you're using Martingale. Let's say, okay, I start with $10, I lose 10. Okay, next trade I do 20. Okay, I'm risking 20. If I lose that one, I'm down $30 for the day. Okay, so then maybe we'll try one more with 40. If you lose that one too, do you really want to go up to 80? And again, it depends on how much money you have to start with. So it's really going to be dependent on your starting capital. All right, so I would do a daily loss limit and be prepared to make another deposit if you lose 3 trades in a row, depending on how much you're starting with. So you can mix and match these concepts to develop your own trading plan, or you can just use one. For instance, if you just want to use this one, let's just say, okay, you know what, from here on out, I'm going to take partials. That's more than fine. That's enough. But if you want to be in that 1% and be a little more flexible, check out what we can do now that we understand what we're doing. Here's one strategy, just for example. You can use a martingale risk method and moving your stop loss to break even. How would that work? If you use the martingale method, remember you double your position size after a loss and move the stop loss to break even. Once the trade reaches 1R, you're protecting your downside. So in this example, you risk $100 to say make $200, and it goes up in that favor, say $100 or 1R. Set the stop loss to break even. There's no loss, and that's fine. Okay, it reduces the possibility of large losses by, like I said, securing that break even point. And then martingale shouldn't even have to really come into play at that point, because you have that capital progression and you get that aggressive growth. But what's the downside of that? When you move the stop loss to break even, you may get stopped out prematurely, and as well, martingale is still going to require significant capital when you do start to lose. And if you lose before you reach 1R, it can cost you more money. Okay, so again, martingale, worst case scenario, is always going to be a losing streak, because if it works, it can work great. But if it doesn't, watch out. Okay, so here's another strategy that we can combine. You can combine asymmetric compounding, and if we don't remember what that is, that's where you risk all your profits and taking partials. Okay, so let's say you have a risk to reward of 5 to 1. Reward to risk is how it says it here, but I prefer risk to reward, but either way. Okay, so here's a pro of combining that, because if you take partials at 1R, or it could be 2R, it doesn't matter, it's up to you. It can lock in your profit and allows whatever's left to capture a large gain. And then when you use asymmetric compounding on top of that, you can really see heavy gains. Now, the cons of that, though, is that, remember, when you take a partial profit, you're going to cap your upside. Okay? And it's really going to require that you be very, very accurate when it comes to the trades that you're taking. Okay? And I wish I would do a mathematical concept of this, but I'd be doing it on the fly because I really just don't have that. So you kind of have to visualize in your mind what it would look like to combine asymmetric compounding with taking partials at 1R. But just remember that if you're doing that, you're still protecting your downside while you have an unlimited upside. And that's what you really want in trading. You want big gains, small losses. So in conclusion, you have to find the plan that works for you. Simple plans are always the best. Okay, take pieces of what you do like, throw away what you don't. Okay, but if you want to experiment with these plans, what I recommend is that you do it on a demo account and journal your results. So try martingale with a demo account. See how it would look to risk, $10 and then lose, and then $20 and then lose, and then $40 and then lose, and then $80 and then win. See how that would look actually trading it. Okay, or try asymmetric compounding, risking all your profits on a demo account. Journal results, see how it feels, measure the returns, and do what works for you. Okay, experiment. Okay, but you don't use real money to experiment with this stuff. Okay, that's what I'm definitely going to recommend. Okay, now decide what's most important to you: consistent withdrawals or compounding an account. Okay, you got to decide what you want to what you want, where you want to be. What do you want to get out of trading? Do you want a big old fat account that you could just sit on and brag about, or do you want to have a good principal amount that you can make weekly or daily or monthly withdrawals from? It's up to you. Okay, so as well though, know your risk tolerance. If you're on the high risk side, you're going to like asymmetric compounding and martingale. If you don't mind, if it's nothing to you to be down 50% on your account, thinking that you can make 150% on it, that's going to be your bread and butter right there. If you're more low risk, you're going to like moving to break even and taking partials. Now, if you're in the middle, you take one high risk, you take one low risk, and you put them together, be it asymmetric compounding, but also moving your stop loss to break even at 1R. Okay, that would be your plan, ideally. Okay, just a recommendation. But you don't even have to use asymmetric. You can just move the stop loss to break even at 1R and just do that. Now, this information is what's going to get you paid, not trading in and of itself. Now, obviously, I rotate the candle range theory, but what I've laid out for you can work for any trading method, no matter what you're using. Okay, but the best paid traders are the best risk managers, period. Now, here's one last bonus for you. What I'd recommend as well is use a free AI like Grok or ChatGPT to help you develop a plan and ask questions of it. So, for example, here's a simple prompt you can use. Type this into chat or Grok, either way. Pretend you're the best stock or crypto, whatever you're trading. Pretend you're the best blank trader in the world, no matter what your instrument is. That part doesn't matter. Advise me on putting together a trading plan with these kinds of risk methods: martingale, moving to break even at 1R, dynamic risk to reward, asymmetric compounding. Keep your answers brief and simple and basic. Okay. And then go from there. You can interact with the AR, ask AI, ask it questions, and see if you can really hammer out a plan to start testing on demo, on demo, on demo. Okay. And it will help. Okay. I've done that. I use AI to help my trading, and points out little things, give little tips and stuff like that. So it's good. So I definitely recommend that. I actually got this information here and this information here from Grok, okay, AI, because I described what I was doing and I said, okay, here's what I want to do. Give me the pros and the cons, and this is what it spit out. So there you go. And then I could ask more questions of it or not, either way. But that's how that goes. So, in conclusion, again, these are 5 tips that you could use. Take one, take two, take whatever appeals to you. But we have to have a plan. Just like your trading has a plan, your risk management has to have a plan. And I promise, if you implement that and protect your downside and really aim for high upside trades, you will win and you will make money. Okay. But if you don't, you won't. And that's really the downfall of a lot of traders, is that they just don't have a plan. They just take what looks good and hope for the best with their fingers crossed. That's no way to go through life. Have some type of plan, and I promise things will work out better than people who don't. Okay, so like they say, fail to plan, plan to fail. All right, but if you do have a plan, you have a guideline, you know what you're looking for, not only from your trading standpoint, but also from your risk standpoint. So I hope that helps. I appreciate you watching, and let's go get it. Have a great day.